Hello, welcome to GC's Book Club, episode, I suppose technically 2, but I'm calling it the first episode because Cows by Matthew Stocko was a pilot. So, I don't know, for some reason that makes it like episode 0 or something like that. I'm not really sure. But yeah, well, today we're going to be covering Penpal by Dathan Auerbach. It's like Auerbach, I think, something like that. Not quite sure. To be honest, I've never come across the name before, so bit of a tricky one to get going. But yeah, this is a piece that, well, I'll get into a little bit of. So this is, like, according to Wikipedia, Penpal is the debut novel of American author Dathan Auerbach. The horror suspense novel is based on a series of creepypasta stories Auerbach posted to the No Sleep Reddit forum. The book follows the first-person narrator as he realizes he was the focus of an obsessed stalker who tracks him throughout his childhood. The work was first self-published in paperback on July 11th, 2012. Through the author's Thousand Vultures imprint, the stories were adapted for the No Sleep podcast debut season in 2011 and narrated by Sammy Rayner. And apparently film rights were optioned. Not really sure what that means, to be honest. I guess given up as a potential kind of thing. But that was quite a while ago now, 12 years back. So to be honest, I'm not really sure whether it would make a particularly great film, in all honesty, mainly because I don't know, I find, like, because of the narration and the atmosphere, a lot of the suspense and whatnot is quite reliant on the way it's depicted by the narrator. I mean, you could probably convey that via certain cinematography and whatnot, but I feel like you would definitely lose the intimate touch that the novel has. But more on that later. I'm hoping a few of you actually read it. It doesn't look like many people are bothered in general at this moment, so I'm going to get into the reading. I'm going to read the first, and if I'm honest, probably the thing that hooked me the most about the book was the opening chapter, if that's the right way to call it, because the way it's kind of told is in a series of vignettes, short stories, kind of. I mean, I feel like it's been categorized in such a manner mainly because of its origins, whereas if you were to go into it, I don't think you would be associating it so much with a group of shorts or whatnot. It is a linear jumping kind of novel. But at the same time, yeah, I don't think you'd be, say, nitpicking or cherry picking between different chapters if you just picked it up. You'd just go from, beginning to end, and probably would be none the wiser. It is interesting doing these types of things just in general, because of how a story starts kind of also channels how people understand it and how they relate to it and things of that fashion. And what I've been trying to do, or I would be looking to do, is a sort of investigation into certain types of books and just how they've come into a certain kind of status, especially in the online realm, which I find quite interesting. Mainly because there's quite a few out there that are either well known in the extreme horror. In this one, obviously, this is more. It is kind of known as suspense and horror and mystery, I suppose. I do think it's slightly over exaggerated on just how creepy it is, but we'll get more into that a bit later. If you haven't gone and read it yet, you can get a good idea of what it's all about shortly when I do a bit of a reading from it. But after that, I'm going to be spoiling the fuck out of it, so that's kind of like a warning. Obviously this is a book club, but I feel like you have to kind of put a disclaimer on everything these days. So yeah, there's going to be spoilers, obviously, because we're discussing the book. So just an FYI there. And yeah, well, I'll get into that. And the reason I think the opening is good is because, like I mentioned with the cows discussion, it's the setup that works very well. And it does so for a number of reasons with Auerbach's Penpal. Like, he very cleverly plants the notion of the unreliability of memory into your head, and then structures the novel in a non-linear fashion, which I think complements the notion of memories themselves very well, and is probably the main reason it becomes quite an addictive read, because you kind of feel like you're combing through, obviously not your own history, but one that is certainly relatable in terms of an upbringing. And in some sense it was like almost like rewatching Stephen King's The Body, Stand By Me. There's a lot of scenes in the book that I thought were either taken from that or inspired by it. But yeah, again, more on that a bit later. I'm trying to warm up. I'm fucking tired, so I'm trying to get. Well, that's interesting, because I actually found the exact same thing with Rage. Not to hark on too much about Stephen King again, but well, funnily enough, Bachman Auerbach. It's just a land of coincidences here. But yeah, with that particular novel, the story surrounding it is actually way more fascinating. In almost a kind of, from my perspective, almost like a House of Leaves kind of fashion, where you've got this alter ego of King's who pens a story about a coming of age, angsty incel type kid who does go on a school shooting, and then later on people are, you know, hiding it in their lockers and actually going on school shooting. It's quite fascinating in that regard. But yeah, we're here to judge as much as we objectively can on the novel in question, without its origins, etymology, anything like that. It's more about, because I actually think if you go into this blind, you'll probably enjoy it a lot more. Obviously, confirmation bias and hype in general can also increase your enjoyment of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wanted in a literary sense. It's just that it's nice to feel part of a collective, and it is, you know, it's rather endearing, actually, I would say, how this book came about in general, mainly because it was funded with a Kickstarter because of the interest it got on the No Sleep subreddit, and built itself from there. And it's quite nice to see that, just in general. I mean, I'm also somewhat skeptical, or whenever I hear about things like that, I just think, is this just hype because a bunch of teenagers have padded it into some sort of cultish status or whatever? But that, you know, it's unfair to judge it based on that. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, essentially all publishers are just people who agree that a certain piece should be put out there, and then they create hype surrounding it in whichever way they can, and anyone who succeeds doing that, fucking good luck to them. It's very hard to get a book in someone's hands, let alone getting them to read it and then talk about it. So if it can be done in such a fashion, have at it. Anyway, I'll do a bit of a reading. It's about 4 pages, so it won't take me too long, but this will give you a general idea, and then I'll expand a bit more on what I thought of it, I suppose. But for the back matter, this is all we get. In an attempt to make sense of his own mysterious and unsettling childhood memories, a man begins to reconstruct his past. As the games and adventures of his youth become engulfed by a larger story, he finds that it forms a tapestry of unbelievable horror that he never could have expected. Each chapter completes a different piece of the puzzle for both you and the narrator, and by the end of it all, you will wish you could forget what he never knew. Nice little kind of play with words at the end there. It kind of adds a certain air of uncertainty, which I quite like. Little bit basic, but gets the job done, I would say. It intrigues, but it barely says anything, which is a compliment and a criticism, actually, I would say, overall. But anyway. Memories. When I was younger, I took a job at a deli that had what the owner called an ice cream buffet. On Thursdays, children would get a free ice cream cone with their meals, and they could pick any one of the 15 flavours we had. There were many times when a child had some understandable degree of difficulty selecting their preferred scoop, but eventually each kid would happily make their choice when the mum or dad urged them along, except, that is, for one little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6, and when her father picked her up so she could see through the glass, her face lit up as her eyes moved over all kinds of ice cream that were on display. When her dad asked her which flavour she wanted, she must have ignored the fact that he was not speaking about the plurality of scoops, and she excitedly named some and pointed to others. Gradually, the realisation began to set in that she could only choose one kind of ice cream. And as I watched her try to pick just one flavour, I could see how anxious she was becoming. It wasn't greed that beset her, it was the result of wanting many things equally, but not having the emotional resources to settle arbitrarily on just one. As the anxiety consumed her, she began to cry. There was no tantrum. She didn't yell or pout. She simply could not choose. As her father was comforting her, I caught his eye and made a gesture. He nodded, and after a few seconds I leaned over the counter and called to her as I extended my hand. The little girl looked up to see me holding a cone towering with 5 different scoops of ice cream. Her mood was transformed instantly, and I can say with all sincerity that I have never seen another human being in such a state of pure jubilation. The father thanked me and saw to it that the girl did as well. They left, and we all moved on with our lives. That was years ago, though my mind returns to that day for different reasons now and again. Most of the time I just think about how happy she was, but sometimes I think about how, despite her seemingly limitless joy that day, in all likelihood she probably doesn't remember me or the ice cream. This doesn't bother me. As children we have terrific and terrible times, events that, as we experience them, seem to be the most important things that have ever happened to us. But more often than not, we forget them. Truth to tell, at any point in our lives, we've forgotten more than we know about our own history. The world moves on, and so do we, and what was once important fades away. But that's just the nature of memory. The events of our lives unfold linearly, but in the mental reel of these past experiences, most of the frames that haven't been completely stolen by time are left distorted and blurred by it. When you try to reconstruct the series, you find that it isn't complete, but maybe this never really bothers you, because you can't miss what you don't remember. We all have voids in our narratives, lost time that we attempt to reclaim with best guesses. Most people have whole parts of their stories that they don't realise are patchworks of guesswork, and those who do realise it aren't likely to care. We want so badly to be happy, to live the kinds of lives that we always hoped we'd live, that we give gifts to ourselves by remembering things not as they were, but as we wish they were. Our loved ones pass away or simply leave our lives forever too soon, and we think to ourselves, I wasn't ready for you to leave. It just wasn't time, because we're never truly ready, because it's never truly time. So we keep them in our memories, And when we regret that we don't have more memories of them, maybe our minds give us more gifts. Gradually we find ourselves remembering them being with us in times and places that they couldn't have been. And gradually we stop correcting ourselves because, well, we want them to have been there. Some memories slip away through the cracks of our minds, but leave fibres behind so that we know there's something missing. But this isn't all that bad. In fact, if we remembered every detail of every day, we might find ourselves so fixated on the past that most of our memories would be of us just sitting in a dark room thinking about all of our yesterdays, too focused on what was to care at all about what will be. And what of bad things? What are those things that we wish had never happened if we could remember them? Sometimes forgetting is the gift that we give ourselves, and when we do, it's back to the void, and it's time for more guesses toward a better life. But sometimes you realise that the memories were always there. You just needed to be reminded. When this happens, it offers a previously lacked context for memories that, while never missing, were never understood. This is a special kind of gift. Our lives are so short that it seems a crime to squander any of it by forgetting. Memories extend our lives backward through time, making them feel longer. And that's what we want. So we try to remember. But sometimes when we do, we wish that we could just forget again. But I remember. The story that I'm about to tell you is the product of my own mental archaeology. Of course, like all great digs, how the artifacts fit together in a timeline is about as immediately clear as which things are important and which are not. Some parts of this story I have always remembered, others were buried deeply, and some I simply never knew about and have only recently discovered. As is often the case, remembering one thing helps you remember another, and as you learn new things about your old life, memories that you thought were insignificant, or at the very least irrelevant, parts of your overall story are suddenly its foundation. I began reconstructing and transcribing parts of this story on my own, and when I eventually and inevitably had questions, I turned to the only other person who could claim any amount of expertise concerning my history, my mother. Over the course of several weeks, my mother and I had a series of increasingly strained conversations, and it was through these talks that the importance of some forgotten, ignored, or never-known childhood events became clear. Looking back, these events all seem to fit so squarely that I can hardly believe they required reassembly at all. But what we notice in our lives, particularly as children, is so extraordinarily selective and contextualized that something ostensibly benign or self-contained can be transformed by a single detail into something terrible and pervasive. You just have to know what you're looking for, and when you do, suddenly it's all you can see. Here I've tried to preserve both my thoughts and experiences of my early life, as well as the gradual influx of new information, so that you might learn of these events as I experienced them. Parts of this story were written before I knew what I now know, all of which you will know by the end of this story, but I've kept the chapters as they were originally written. To the best of my ability, I've avoided contaminating my old memories with new revelations, and I've tried to be as faithful to the past as was possible when extrapolating from my earliest memories. What I offer you here is a combination of what I remember, what I've learnt about my past from my mother, and what seems most likely, though my guesswork was restricted to gaps that are ultimately unimportant. If I was successful in all of this, then you will understand now as I understood then, and the pieces of my history will fall into place for you in very much the same way that have only recently done so for me. Okay, well, here we go. Now we're into the spoiler territory, I suppose. Reading that was actually quite interesting because I haven't looked at it since finishing it, which was about, I don't know, 10 days ago or something now, and I was trying to remind myself of exactly how it went, but I wanted to avoid taking a look. But it is interesting how your perspective starts to shift, because when I first read it, I thought it was a really poignant introduction into a novel that is about uncertainty and unreliability of memory and whatnot. But reading it that time, I was quite fascinated to think that he might have been writing it with mind of how he released the sections of the book, and it's almost like he's speaking as the author to the people on Reddit, given that it's him trying to understand the things that he wrote, but now he's trying to understand it in a different context because everything's having to be connected, whilst at the same time setting the tone, the mood, and in a weird way very confidently telling you some of this is bullshit, but I don't know which bits, you're just going to have to trust me. So in a weird kind of sense, he's openly admitting to being a liar, and at the same time it's very agreeable to you because well, we're all aware of our own, or the way memories work and how they can I mean, he's very spot on in terms of how we can completely misremember certain events and even feature people that weren't there and couldn't possibly be there, or hold our own memory of an event or whatever that we weren't actually at, and all that type of thing. It is somewhat simple, but I do feel like there's a, you know, it's kind of a sort of a less is more effect, I would say. And I do wonder whether parts of that was the narrator, or at least the author, trying to convey someone who has been pretty shell-shocked by their childhood experience, or at least when they've come to try to truly analyze it, it might have left them almost like there's something missing in their own head a little bit. And there's an element of him sounding somewhat creepy, I would say, but that goes on more, and obviously it feels like it's an external influence that makes it creepy, but I actually would argue that it's also because he, like the Penpal stalker guy himself, both remain unnamed throughout the whole piece, and I don't think that's a mistake. I mean, I certainly don't in terms of the narrator being unnamed, which was kind of a feature of the book that I didn't see much point of, and I could only really argue that the reason he would leave out his name is because it's protecting his identity, so it lends itself a element of realism. But there were moments throughout, especially during the sporadic and scarcely seen dialogue scenes, where people keep mentioning other characters' names, like Josh, Mrs. Maggie, Veronica. There's quite a few throughout, but he, obviously when people talk to him, they never say his name. But at times it felt a little bit awkward, and I don't know, it might have been my own awareness of the fact that it's like, oh yeah, we don't know who this kid is, what's his fucking name, or who the narrator is. And so whenever other names were mentioned, it felt like a bit glaringly obvious that he was deliberately avoiding using his own. But it was a nitpick. It wasn't really like a criticism per se. But and yeah, well, in terms of an opening, I think it works very well because the tone is set. The narration essentially is set as well, because he does mention how there isn't really much of a linear structure to memory, and then obviously as we go through the story, he's jumping back and forth between memories and timelines and whatnot. So I thought that was clever. Also, the atmosphere of the piece, I think, is pretty much achieved straight away, where there is something odd about it and you can't quite put your finger on it. And I think that is a thread that moves throughout the whole piece very well, and really is kind of the tightrope it walks along the whole way until possibly right at the end, But even then, I would say that there's definitely elements of it unanswered. But I'll get into that. I mean, yeah, these are the things that I thought were very good about it, and I thought the opening was pretty strong. I did think the scenes as it moved along were unnerving. They got under your skin a bit, but I would also argue I don't really think it's as scary as people were going on about. I don't know. Maybe I'm too fucked up or something. I don't know, but yeah, I can recognise how it's creepy as fuck in places. Especially, I thought probably the most unnerving bit was when he's in the woods, and I think this is a pretty early section, and it's quite dream-esque, and that was actually very well done, I thought, because it was kind of like you were questioning whether he was in a dream, like the narrator was, and being in the dark, and it fits very much in with that, nightmare scenario where, and the woods itself, especially in a Freudian sense, is like a very can be a transitory period, or a period of like it symbolizes so much, and for a kid of his age, just imagining yourself in that kind of scenario is pretty petrifying. But I thought the thing that was done well was, in his mind, when he gets back, he thinks he's being pulled away by monsters and all of this, and this is what it turns out to be is just his mum and a cop who are there because he's gone missing. But then there's this letter saying he's run off, and it's got a misspelled name, and there's just like a few things in there where you're like, well, okay, who the fuck's left this? And then it will jump into the next bit where it's talking about how the Penpal operation kind of came around, and what was the main factor behind that. I mean, nowadays you'd never see something like this happen, like, because the whole thing is about putting a letter on the end of a balloon and letting the balloons all fly out, and then whoever gets a hold of it may or may not write to you or whatever. There's no way in hell something like this would happen, even if it was being sent to the school. Maybe this kind of thing did happen, I don't know. I mean, probably, or at least something of a similar vein, before the world got a bit safety obsessed and started thinking every stranger was trying to fiddle their kids or whatever. But part of me was a bit like, I found it a little bit difficult to believe it in my own modern sensibility, I suppose. But again, I am being somewhat nitpicky here. It was a fine trope to use and made it intriguing for sure. And yeah, what happens out of that, it does increasingly become weirder and weirder. And there are, obviously, you will keep in mind that he's telling it from a perspective of a child. For the most part, if I was to be extra critical of it, I would say, like, well, he's not a fucking child now, so why is he relating it all back as if he can't chime in, oh, this must have been because in my head at the time it was like this, but obviously I now know that it's, but he doesn't do that. He kind of just lets it sit. And what, again, with the back matter, all the way it says that this is for you and I to like look at, it's a trick basically, because it's a way of avoiding the thing I just brought up, in terms of like he could just explain it from an adult perspective, when he's doing that because he wants you to be seeing it as he saw it, through the eyes of a child, and how they will extrapolate their own significance toward it. So he always thinks he's going to get a bollocking from his mum, just because in and around this time, obviously this stalker guy keeps revealing his hand in kind of obscure ways that are kind of they totally go over the kid's head at the time. So it's interesting how it does shape his perspective and his viewpoint of his own mother, for instance, things like that. But I would say also that it kind of lends itself to a almost like a choose your own mystery or story kind of thing, but without the actual option to do it. Funnily enough, so it's almost like it's putting you in that mindset because you're being challenged to piece things together. And I just wonder whether it's that necessary in some ways, because it's like trying to engage you by seemingly putting you as a detective, I suppose. But but one of these things, like the strengths of it are also kind of what the weaknesses will be like, I would argue. And it's the same with the structure of the stories themselves, because there's always, you've got the setup and you kind of ease into this kind of tidbit of information or this vignette. So it might involve balloons or it might involve footsteps. Any of the chapters are kind of titled in a certain fashion, and sometimes they are expressing how or what is going to happen in the chapter, so the word is quite literal in terms of how it is titled, but then other times it's totally not, and it throws you off, and then you're kind of like, oh, okay, we're here. But so you got this kind of setup at the beginning, you kind of get this lull of security in the way that it's written, and then toward the latter end of the chapter there'll be a clanger thrown in the works that throws you off and can be pretty weird and creepy, or just leaves you with a lot of question marks. But instead of it continuing on as it naturally would, it kind of presses the reset button, and you're kind of made to go back and then get used to another story. And he might be a few years older, he might be a teenager, he might have different views of the world and all this kind of stuff. Whilst I think the formula works pretty well, I was getting a little bit tired of it just after the halfway point, mainly because you can see how the story's going to run out, and is this all it's going to be, I suppose, is what I was somewhat fearful of. I don't think it is quite in the end, but I don't think it doesn't stretch out in any other fashion. I don't think it kind of sticks with this format, which is fine. I mean, it's not a major criticism, but I did notice it in terms of a formula. And again, it's the strengths of it also kind of reveal the cracks, because were he to actually extrapolate on some of the incidences, that could have made it a bit more, I don't know, potentially more intriguing, but he might have lost the unnerving kind of under your skin kind of element of it, because he would have explained too much. So actually, the more you talk about like what you were expecting from it, it's kind of reminding me of what I was hoping a bit more from it, because I thought like the stalker would have to relate to the kid a bit more than he did, because he seemed like just a random guy who happened to get this letter, and because of that he just becomes obsessed. Obviously what he does at the end, especially with his best mate, and he kind of does this pretty weird shit, obviously, that it definitely adds a kind of eeriness that you are left feeling cold by and whatnot. But I did just think it was a little bit of a shame you don't learn a bit more about this, like who was this guy. I suppose, I just felt like, because the dad's never mentioned, so I kept wondering, like, is this potentially like the ex of his mum's, who maybe she broke up with when she finds out she's pregnant with the kid, but it's not his, but then he thinks it's his. I don't know, something like that that's built up this like obsession. And I mean, really, it could be that. I don't think there's no real answer at the end. And the other things I just thought, I mean, this guy spent like his whole life stalking this kid, pretty much. And I mean, maybe I missed something, but I did just wonder, like, Okay, so what he's literally like the boogeyman, basically. He is this Jeepers Creepers kind of dude who's just happens to have chosen this 5-year-old kid to, you know, hunt down, stalk, try to abduct, but then not for some reason, and then settle on his best mate because what, he can torture him through that, like he's some sort of Hannibal Lecter in the making, or some sort of I don't know. I mean, you don't really get answers for that, but that's kind of fine, I suppose. Like, it's not really about, you know, the mind of a stalker. It's about the mind of a child who has a stalker, and that might be asking too much of it. And I can kind of give the narration the benefit of the doubt, because I do think you would be a bit of a weirdo if you found out all of this stuff, or you didn't know it growing up, but you might have sensed something very odd when, you know, you mentioned something to your mum, and then all of a sudden you're moving, and then when he goes to school he's got no mates, and then I suppose I was thinking about this earlier, and I was kind of wondering, like, is this because people found out that about this creep who was like following him about, and therefore families were kind of like a bit on their guard, even around the child? It's not his fault, but they were probably a bit like, don't talk to that little weirdo. he's a pedo cock tease kind of thing. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. I just found it it's interesting when you look back on it, and just in terms of how your own perspective kind of switches, because he has the, I even wondered at the beginning, like, he keeps talking about Josh, his best mate. For a while I thought he was making him up, because he never was in the story, and then when he was there he barely said a fucking word. But then, yeah, obviously as it went on, it did turn out to be a genuine mate. And I think one of the stronger elements of the story is that it does just get you wondering, like, where it's going and who's playing what kind of role. And yeah, they do the kind of typical risky things that kids do, and they're kind of oblivious to the dangers that are out there, especially, like, you know, venturing outside when they're children, like quite young, and then they're not knowing what kind of vulnerable position they're putting themselves in. When he revisits his old house and sees that it's been abandoned and all this kind of stuff, you kind of realize the severity that his stalker is going to, or at least his level of obsession, which I do think's reflected by the prose quite well, because it's like he's wanting to know it to the point where it almost becomes, I wouldn't say obsessive, but it definitely becomes like an element of kind of insanity, because it's like trying to piece things together just like you are. And, you know, really, we don't know at the end whether certain, you know, things do connect. Like, for instance, is the old woman with dementia, is she killed by the guy at some point? Probably, but we don't really know. When his best friend's abducted, does he keep hold of him for 3 odd years or whatever, and or is it all over with pretty quickly? The fact that he's taunting another family and all this kind of stuff, I mean, it is pretty fucking harrowing in terms of, like, when you imagine the effect it must have had on his best mate's family, the mother especially, and the father obviously. But it is interesting because you kind of wonder, maybe it's created another type of stalker type, and that's why he comes across as pretty weird, just because he's probably lived most of his life with this shadow looming over him without even realizing it, but only sensing it. So it's like, you know, something's wrong, but you can't tell what it is. And then when these things come up, it's still very confusing, and I guess in a way it kind of puts him in a state of not trauma exactly, but almost like a preemptive trauma, or at least like a preparation for it. Like, he should feel, I guess he feels kind of survivor guilt and whatnot, But I think it's got something more than that overall. Um, yeah, I don't know. The more I'm kind of like thinking about it at this moment, I thought some of it was pretty strong. I did think it got a bit rushed towards the end. It kind of went a bit crazy with the whole. He gets older, and then the sister kind of gets spoken of pretty haphazardly. I was a little bit surprised to even hear that she existed, and that our guy had a bit of a thing for her. He kind of circumvents that by just going on about how genuinely beautiful he thought she was and all this kind of stuff, when all the other girls didn't touch her by comparison and all this. And she gets friendly with him and stuff, but I'm kind of assuming she only really gets friendly with him because of her brother going missing, and he is like the last link to her brother, essentially. And then his involvement with her obviously ends in disaster, and you just think this guy is just out to obliterate anyone who gets close to him overall. And you do wonder, maybe I think Josh was abducted the night he runs her down and all of this stuff, although he would have been a pretty busy boy that night, and that's a lot to deal with in a single night. But what attracts me? I wouldn't really. I mean, this is probably the first horror I've spoken of for a while. I don't know. I mean, I find life is pretty horrific, so I guess I'm intrigued by the macabre and whatnot. I mean, if I was to be really harsh about this novel, I'd say if you're like 15, you'll think this is a masterpiece. It's got the reading level of around that age, maybe a bit older. This isn't a massive criticism of it. Obviously, most of it's being told somewhat through the perspective of a child. Although I'd still say it's an adult remembering their childhood and therefore lending a certain simplicity to the events. It's kind of like he's almost reimagining himself as a kid to tell the story. But I think there's quite a few gaps in that, in terms of you don't really get much of a personality out of him, aside from the fact that it's all a bit weird and uncertain in general. But I kind of get it as well. I do think the consistency of the tone works, and the length of the book just about gets away with it, because if it carried on any longer, and it could have done, because I felt like the ending, whilst I guess it's a twist in some regard, or at least it's somewhat surprising to hear it, but it's particularly more savage for the family involved, I would say, rather than him, although obviously he's going to be pretty scarred by it and wonder just why, and he won't ever get any answer or anything like that. It was just someone who got obsessed. But then why he felt the need to use Josh, I didn't really think that was answered either, really, overall. It couldn't have been that he confused him for that kid, because he dresses him in the same clothes that go missing years prior. And he gives him a haircut, I think, or bleaches his hair or something like that to make him look like him. So he acts almost as if that kid's unreachable or something. And it's like, well, you had him in your grasp the whole time. I don't really understand. What is this? Some sort of Joker Batman shit where it's like he can't live knowing he's gone, even if it's, it's this kind of weird they both have to exist in order for the whole thing to continue or something. But then why would the killer then insist on getting buried alive with him and killing himself off with him? Kind of an odd, I don't know. I mean, there could be answers to it, but you're not really given them. You can only project your own kind of thoughts on it. And I did appreciate how it was presenting the story and like giving this account, and I think in some regard like this kind of, it's almost like a vicarious trauma in a sense. It's like a trauma you'd feel guilty of feeling, because obviously it hasn't exactly destroyed you and your mother, but it's definitely left its mark. And yet you probably just be more perplexed by the bigger question of why, which I guess you and the author or the narrator both feel at the end, because you're just like, yeah, you're not really afforded the conclusion, and you're given like a series of events, but then you are kind of thinking like, but why? Like, I don't really yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but I would argue that it's very, very rare for it not to be someone who has some sort of, like, even if it was just like he was projecting the image of his own dead child, for instance. Maybe that was even it. Maybe that's why he kills his mate, because it's like he can't bear to kill the child. That's why I kept thinking maybe this is actually his stepdad or would-be dad if the mum didn't chuck him because he was a fucking weirdo or something like that. I don't know. But I really don't think it is that. I think it is just a random obsession. But even in what was that film called with Rhys Ifans and Daniel Craig? Enduring Love, I think it might have been called. I mean, that was a guy who became completely obsessed with this Daniel Craig's character. But I still think there was a connection as to why. It was something to do with him helping him out, or yeah, I don't know. He just built this, like, maybe he was a fan of his. I mean, he wasn't like a celebrity in it, but he was maybe not. I can't remember, but yeah, it's I don't know. It's basically cause and effect, isn't it? And I suppose you could argue that, yeah, the balloon coming out of nowhere might have made the stalker feel like this was destiny or some sort of message from God, quite literally, something like that. But I would have liked to have seen more symbolism to showcase that, I suppose. Not just, oh, he writes stamps on the dollar sign and then the weirdo guy pays for some shitty snow cones and reveals himself, but in the kid's mind it's just this huge coincidence or whatever, where of course it's not. But that doesn't signify some sort of deific notion or prophetic kind of thing. But then again, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's interesting to get that because you don't ever see it, but I think that it kind of defies storytelling. That's, I think, what the main issue with that, in terms of, like, well, narrative is. It's just like, it is like the monster under the bed then, isn't it? But in a personified form. But I don't know. I would say that there are more answers to it. It's just that you don't get them in the book. Well, yeah, especially like the. I think the thing that probably would have motivated me the most was like all of the Polaroids, like this fucking freaky ass collection of him literally stalking. Yeah, that would have been somewhat alarming to me, and probably would have motivated me to move, not just house, but the fucking state. You know, I would have got the hell out of there because yeah, like you said about them, they don't tell the police about it, or they don't encourage them to actually try and find out who it is. That's all quite odd. But again, just skipping over it to not give, to just like let it off the hook for an explanation. If I was going to be savage, I'd say, well, it's just not good enough, is it? It is a sign of a weak kind of piece, and I am somewhat flabbergasted by the amount of high praise this has. Just mainly because, whilst good, it isn't great. Like it's a good piece. I would say overall, I'd give it a solid 3.5, probably. 4 maybe if I was being generous, but it's far from a 5. You know, it's not even in that kind of category. It's still good, but. And there are a lot of strengths to it, but I almost feel like its origins, like I was saying earlier, like you should only judge it as the novel itself, but it's almost impossible to do that these days anyway, because it only takes a quick Google and you're going to get all the information you could ever hope not to discover, and whatever rabbit hole you want to go down, yeah, will and you know, these things make for interesting trivia as to, I think even on Wikipedia, like there's something the author mentions about him swearing he has this memory about being on the porch or waking up on the porch, it's the middle of the night, and his mum says, well, no, that never happened, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But to him it's a very vivid and therefore real kind of memory, and I can kind of see how that might have even been like a precursor to how this novel came about, and how the way the stories are told are kind of gripping onto that, yeah, mysterious air kind of thing. But yeah, like I said earlier, I think it's basically for, what would you call it, young adults nowadays? Is that the right phrase? I mean, that's we just call that teenagers, but these days I think that covers most, 20 odd year olds. So and even that, I mean, that's not a criticism of it. I think sometimes the simplicity of which it's told is a strength. It's very hard to maintain a certain tone, but it can also be just as hard to stretch it out once you're in it, because it traps you essentially. But in fairness to the piece, I don't think the guy's much older. I think he's as I said, 20 odd. Like, he's not that old, so really it's not that far in the past. What might have been interesting is if he gets to a certain age and then he has some weird urge to start repeating the pattern or something. I don't know, but an interesting read. And I have to say, like, I do like not to hark on about tone and whatnot, but there is something to it. It's nice to read something that you can kind of trust in what it's trying to do. I would say that it nearly betrays that at the end, mainly because it goes for a very almost action-packed, but not quite action-packed because it is still in the past. The cruelty of like what happens to his best friend's father is savage, and I quite liked how the woman with dementia kind of mirrored what happened to his mum, or what was going to happen due to the loss of her children and whatnot. So that was kind of emblematic of a cyclical trauma that, you know, hurt people even when it's inadvertent, you know. And that kind of lent the world a kind of very visceral quality. But I would have liked to have known a bit more about the mum, because she was either pretty neglectful or a total doormat or just a bit stupid. Like I couldn't quite work her out in terms of like, well, what the fuck is she doing? Like, why is she she's like, yeah, okay, she makes them move, but they move to a place that is pretty close to where they were anyway. So if the kid wants to, he can just scarp her, which he's been doing anyway. And she doesn't seem, I don't know, it's kind of one of those weird things. But maybe at the time it was set, the paranoia and whatnot surrounding that might not have been so severe. But if my own kid came running home after he's left a letter saying he's run away, and it's misspelled, which obviously gives away the fact that he didn't write it, you could only, you know, extrapolate from that some fucking weirdo has been inside your house and probably tried to abduct your kid. Because obviously you're going to scrutinize your own child to say, where the fuck have you been, you little asshole? All this kind of stuff. And yet, nah, she doesn't do anything. So I just kind of wondered, was she just mentally ill or something? Was she just an unfit mother? She didn't seem it, but you have to wonder as to the parenting style, let's say. Yeah, I know. Ridiculous. Well, Carol, don't keep it all to yourself. Let us know what you think. Let it out. Maybe Josh's dad was porking his mum, and that's why they were like, we can't tell the police, because then they're going to find out that you're the father of... Because the father of the kid never gets mentioned, as far as I'm aware. Which I didn't mind, but I thought, why? I don't know. I just kept thinking, like, why is he not mentioned? Because it's just planting this seed in my head, at least, as like, is this the dad? Maybe that's why he can't kill him, because he knows it's his blood or whatever. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really make a blind bit of difference if it's the milkman or whatever, because you never find out. He's more like an entity than anything else. But I suppose the aim of the piece is to make you ask these types of questions, and though I found the methods in which it got you to do that to be a little bit cheap, I suppose would be my criticism. Because really, I mean, a story should be intriguing you to ask these questions anyway, not telling you, oh, you know, you and I are going to go on this journey and figure these things out. It's like, well, you don't need to tell me that. I'll do that myself, thank you very much. That's the whole fucking point. But at the same time, what with it being from a child, I'll be generous and say it's a child's perspective, but it really isn't overall. It's it is, but it's a remembered child's perspective, if you know what I mean. So whatever. I think that's it, actually. I don't really think there's much else to say on it. If I get to certain bits or something, I remember something, I think, okay, the thing, if I was going to be even more critical, I'd say the guy is definitely a Stephen King fan. Like, possibly a massive fanboy of Stephen King, or it has at least read half of his novels, which is a fucking lot at this stage. Mainly because I found a lot of the tropes to be too similar, actually. If I was to, I mean, I still felt like the tone and language was his own, and I'd give Auerbach his due for that. It felt like it was definitely a voice that wasn't borrowed from something else, or at least, or even influenced potentially. I mean, obviously it had some influence from somewhere, but the tropes it used and plot developments felt pretty Stephen King. I mean, with the cat, you can point to Pet Sematary. With the under the floorboard or under the house, Stand By Me. Then you've got there's other things that I'm not remembering now, but there's just all these little things in there. Where even being in the woods, I would say. But then again, you know, that's just a typical thing, so I wouldn't say that that's necessarily King. It's just a thing that's used quite a lot. But I swear there were some others. Maybe just the kind of, well, you don't know where you are in the place, so it kind of feels like you might as well be in Maine or something like that. Yeah, the whole thing with him and the best friend, all of that kind of stuff. But that might be just due to the ubiquitousness of King's work and whatnot, so it might be an unfair judgment to make on it, but it did feel it at least. But maybe that was one of the tricks Auerbach was using, because it's like you might not relate to some of these childhood experiences, but you will in a vicarious fashion because you've seen it before in other movies that were involving kids and whatnot. So yeah. Oh, well, I never said Welbeck's was next, by the way. I would argue, yeah, I don't know either. Maybe because it kind of made that seem like he was following him as he was going on this date, and then they were, heading for her car, I believe, and he goes for a piss, and during his slash she gets mauled down, and then there's that whole thing when the phone gets switched. So there's some sort of, so apparently during this, because I actually read that Josh was probably in the car, because although I'm not sure that makes sense, to be honest, hearing that, because I think Veronica's already said something about the brother's gone missing for 3 years, something like that. Yeah, I don't know, can't remember, but yeah. So the stalker guy's following him around as he's going on this date, and then he just decides she needs to be gone as well. I kind of, yeah. I don't know. It's kind of hard to know, but I guess, I mean, it seemed like in his mind it was like, well, if I can run her over, then when they get to the hospital, I'll steal her phone and start exchanging texts. He basically catfishes him with this bit, doesn't he? So they're texting all the time, like a couple of teenagers. He's like the ultimate troll, pretty much. He's like a troll who's made it a living to just torment this kid for apparently no reason whatsoever. It's just like, how dare you send me that letter, you little prick. I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to bringing you down. Like, think you're going to get some action with that older girl? Think again, motherfucker. Vroom, vroom. Think you're going to see your best friend? Fuck that. I don't know. It's kind of, I mean, I was going to be really brutally harsh. I could actually make quite a comedy out of it. Even the old woman, he's like, how dare you try and befriend the sweet little old lady after all that time you said no to going round her house. Fuck that. Like, she's dead too. Like, that's because you're a dirty man, and there's no hope for you. That's what I would say. To be honest, I was actually thinking, well, I mean, I said it earlier, I thought she only agreed to it because probably the brother being missing or whatever, and that was the last link to him. Because, yeah, aside from that, why would she agree? Like, a girl of her age, it's unlikely, unless the only girls I knew who did that, who would date guys like a couple of years younger at that age, were sluts. So maybe he was hoping, and that's when the guy's there. I don't think so. Think you're gonna get your dick wet, motherfucker? Think again. So I'm trashing it because I'm bored of talking about it now, but I thought it was fun. Hey, no, well, in fairness to it, I still say it's well, it's fine in terms of how it got published. No problem at all. I'd say it's yeah, it could have been fleshed out a bit more and whatnot, but yeah, publishing wise, I thought it was pretty solid actually overall. Well edited, good pacing. Didn't outstay its welcome. There could actually be a lot learnt from it in that regard, in terms of like not having too much filler and whatnot. So jar, but it's kids horror basically. It's not adult really. Yeah, I agree actually. I think the mum might have been way more involved than he realizes, and that might be, she's trying to keep him sweet because now he's a proper freak. He's probably never going to get a woman of his own, so she can safely live with the knowledge that he's going to be wiping her ass when she's 83 or whatever, and yet and the dad's the one who has to fucking dig up his dead son. Savage stuff, and yet we're all crying for the women who've lost their kids. It's like the dad's fucking reality is savage, and the dad of the kid isn't even mentioned. So well, I'll take this down. This is the end of the Penpal rhetoric. There might be a bit more if you're interested to hear it, but going by the viewer count, doesn't seem that way. So I'm going to call it quits on this one. I've enjoyed it. I mean, I was actually going to say, should we have a vote for the next one? I've been pissing through books actually of late. So the next one I was going to suggest was going to be another, well, extreme horror piece, but I might hold the phone on that. And well, as I was saying it earlier, like what I'm intrigued by is like how these books are done pretty fucking well. And I can guess with this one, you know, it's 10, 12 years old now, but it built up a lot of hype. And just as a, you know, someone who puts out their own stuff as well, like I am intrigued to see what it is that actually makes these books earn these cultish kind of statuses. Based on what I've read, which is only 2, I mean, to me, Cows is like way better. But I can also see why a lot of people would disagree with me on that. But in terms of I suppose clarity of vision, maybe. But I do also, I mean, to give Auerbach his due with this one, I do think it's got a lot going for it. I know I was somewhat pissing over it a minute ago, but I actually think I thought it was quite good overall. You know, I suppose it might be a book that kind of somewhat leaves you wanting, because you do want answers, but that's the kind of, well, that's actually in a way a compliment. It's better to get out and leave them wanting more than it is to outstay your welcome and kind of be, yeah, have people wish you just fucked off already kind of thing. So I think maybe with the nature of things today is like we always want more, or we get given more even when we don't want it. So there's always like the next series, the next season, the next this. These characters keep coming back. I mean, how many fucking Spider-Mans have there been nowadays? It's like, it's pretty ridiculous that nothing can be just a standalone piece. And I do think that does affect us in the social consciousness, mainly because you just get used to seeing the same old shit being regurgitated. But yeah, remember when they put out movies as standalone? Yeah, I remember. And instead you get hacks. Fucking, I'm gonna go on a fucking True Detective rant. Alright, I'll stop myself. Yeah, cheers for reading. Thanks for reading it as well. I'm glad you somewhat enjoyed it, at least. It does get you thinking. I would say it's a provocative piece in terms of, yeah, it gets your imagination flowing a little bit. And despite being weird, which I still think is a bit of a stretch, it's not that weird. It's weird because you don't get any answers, basically. So, and really, your own narrative-driven sense of, or sensibility, maybe it's actually just a perfect mirror to the human psyche. I don't know. Yeah, it's going alright. Put a vid on Patreon recently about that. You know. No, yeah, it's fine. I'm putting, as I probably have mentioned, I'm putting a collection together. It's about just over halfway through, I guess. I to be honest, I don't have any fucking idea what I think of it. It's weird. Not in a Penpal creepy kind of way. It's just weird. I think I've lost the plot, or I'm losing the plot, and I'm trying to make an experience out of an anthology, basically, I suppose. But I like it so far. I am getting to the stage where I kind of want it over with, but I know that it's not there yet, so I have to just keep plugging away. And yeah, we shall see. I'll be harking on about this probably in 2 or 3 months, because I feel like that's I'm going to release it before the end of the year. That's a fact. All right, set it in stone. It's coming out, and I know which one I want to work on next. In fact, I think I know the next 3 I want to work on, but yeah, they are ones that I probably have mentioned a while back. It's just that I've left them alone for a while, and now when I go back to it, I'm kind of hoping like, okay, now I know what to do. Because what I often find is that you can have, say, 20,000 words or something, but really you've only got 2,000 that are actually workable. I mean, it's a abstract thing or way to say it, but it's more like you can read through it and just go, okay, this is fine. It's a little bit contrived or whatever, but then you might be like, that's an interesting phrase, and then it's like it just clicks, and then you're like, that's the fucking story. And in a weird way, I would say that there is a duality to writing, where when you first put stuff together, you might think it's all good and all this and blah blah blah, but then when you go back to it, your more critical voice, or your more reasoned voice, one would hope, views it, and then you discover really, so the story ends up telling you in its kind of bare boned fashion what its actual story is, and then that's what you're getting at. Because most of the time, it's like when you try and think of ideas for things, the majority of the time your initial ideas are dog shit, basically. But if you pick up the dog shit and put it in your mouth, swirl it around, occasionally you'll pluck out a nugget, and then you look at the nugget and you examine it even more, and then it's like, okay, that's the idea, that's the actual thing. I need to the seed I need to plant and then make that grow. This is kind of this is like gives you an idea of how my anthology probably comes across. It's fucking the ramblings of an absolute lunatic, pretty much. But yeah, well, I don't know. What do you want to read next then? Because I did have one in mind, but I read it pretty quick, and I think some of you would enjoy it, or at least you'd enjoy parts of it. But I'm not sure there'd be that much more to say on it overall. I don't know. It's called The Slop. I'll try and find the... Some of you might have heard of it because it's got a slight culty status, I suppose. But in all honesty, I'm not sure I want that to be the next one. It's this thing. Very extreme horror. I was actually kind of surprised by the way it introduced itself and had some backstory to the protagonist, and was actually intriguing. Like I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I didn't quite expect this. I thought it was all just going to be like, you know, gore, splatterpunk kind of stuff. And it is that, but it only is at a certain point. It's a very quick read. About, 160 odd pages, something like that. It doesn't take long to get through. I did have issues with certain parts of it. So I don't know whether I really want this to be the next one, if I'm honest. But feel free to check it out. Maybe we could feature it as a kind of part of a book club thing. But it's up to you. Well, I'll look it up. Delicious tacos. I mean, perfect name for a book called The Pussy. Awful front cover, but I don't know. What the how do you know about this? This is published quite a while ago. What, 8 years ago? Doesn't really say much about it. What are the reviews? So the first review on Amazon says, debauched, tragic moments of beauty. When all the pussy in the world still can't contain the howling ennui of modern living. This is a funny, horrible, tragic and beautifully twisted exploration of male lust and despair, and well worth reading for anyone with a dark sense of humour. Okay. Next one. The novel is essential in many ways. It is undoubtedly one of the best written, most well-respected novels of the 20th century, and is, therefore, essential to your understanding of 20th century fiction. It's a shame it's come out in the 21st century, but never mind. If you have never read Tacos, this book should be the first one you read. It is the most famous and one of the best, and really captures the essence of tacos. Finally, despite its literary merit, this is a fun, capitalised book to read. You will laugh, you will think, but most of all, you will enjoy reading it, and you will finish it fast. Okay. Have you read it, Payne? Delicious tacos. Trying to get a sample. Okay, so there's a short bit. Okay, so this is the first. Might be able to get this up. What now, she says. We go out a couple of times. We make out, maybe we bone, or maybe we don't, and I'll just never call you. Or maybe we do, and we get married and move slightly out of town to some place where people of modern means can get a pretty big yard, and we get a goat, but the fucking thing is too loud and keeps chewing through the fence. They are surprisingly clever animals. Maybe it actually figures out the latch. The point being, the goat keeps getting out and getting into the neighbour's yard and eating his heirloom tomatoes or whatever the fuck. Maybe we laugh at this. Maybe this discord with our neighbours only brings us closer together, like us against the world. Maybe not. Maybe you never wanted to get it in the first place. Maybe you never wanted to move to the suburbs. Maybe you secretly blame me for everything moving too fast, and now you're stuck out here in Calabasas or something, and now you're like 33, and if you leave me you'll never have biological children, but if you stay with me you don't know how you can stand even one more fucking second in this house in the middle of nowhere, and separating the bank accounts is going to be such a goddamn pain in the ass, and the goat isn't cute anymore. It was a stupid idea, and it has an expected lifespan of like 35 more years, but any place you give it away might as well use it for meat, and this would pretty much be unconscionable. You don't want it, but you can't get rid of it. That's what it's going to be like with you and me in like 4 years, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a fucking crystal ball. I have to say, it's not bad. Not bad. I'm intrigued. It's got the Irvine Welsh kind of intrigue there. Sounds quite good. Probably. I mean, it had a good intro, or at least that section I thought was quite good. But I mean, it kind of means nothing, so pretty good reviews though overall. And it felt like it had a bit of heart to it, despite how you know, embittered it sounded. Okay, apparently it is a book of shorts, apparently, according to this reviewer. And they say this is the best book of short stories of the year. I've read the author's blog for a couple of years, however long it's been around, or however long it's been around. His writing style and flow is very Bukowski, Dennis Johnson. To me, Bukowski is the best American writer, blah blah blah. Sex is notoriously difficult to write about, most likely because of the intellectual writers who are popular today don't have much of it, or it's really boring sex. Either way, they suck at writing about it and they admit it. Delicious Tacos is not only very good at writing about sex, but he's very good at writing about everything and anything. The man makes his former low-wage slave job at McDonald's sound interesting. He speaks from the dark corners of the human mind, the part all great writers touch on, raw, honest, hard truth that makes people's hair curl back and their eyes bulge out. Revolting, disgusting. Why read such a rag? Because it's the only damn thing that's human. In an age of Instagram filters and 3-second Snapchats, we need more naked human truth around here. Also, if you have a soul and never loved an animal, you will shed a tear when you read the story about his cat. What book? Which one? Well, do you want it on ebook? I assume your copy of choice. Let me see. I'll actually see if I can find it. We don't pay for things around here, so. Alright, cool. Yeah, I've got a copy of it already, so I'll read it. I was going to suggest The Tunnel next, I suppose, but I'm down with reading this. It sounds like something I'd enjoy. It sounds like an easy read, in fairness, and it's a little bit, you know, it's got a similar ilk to the ones before, but also maybe its own tone. Alright, so it's in my list. I've got it now. If anyone wants a copy, let me know. Sí, señor, sí. Pero no en español. Sorry, I'm putting the pussy. I'm putting the pussy in my Kindle. Fucking I thought you people were gonna be recommending, I don't know. Fucking Dostoevsky or some shit. But no, it's delicious tacos. Yeah, so it looks like that bit I read was the so here's here's some of the titles. I'm looking forward to Coffee Shop Diary, The Smell of My Wang, Shit Jobs, Telemarketing, Underage Ass, of course. I just want to eat Asian ass forever. I mean, these are some solid titles, I've got to give him that. Shit, piss, cunt, fuck. Dirty Mexican cunt. Just stroke my butthole and tell me how great I am. Shall we, do you want me to read one of them? You know what? That's what I say to the clicks. You want a physical copy? All right, send me an email and where you want me to send it, and I'll do it when I can. I'm currently. If you want to send me the money to send it to you, that would be appreciated. I'm so skint. I wanted to get some cigarettes for tonight, and I just realised like this is such a luxury. Like it's nearly 20 quid just for a fucking 20 pack of fags. The fuck's going on? It's a joke. But no, send me your yeah, where you want me to send it. You want the Asian ass eating one? Is that what we want? I mean, I'm all right with that. The wheel is here, by the way. Just remind you. Waiting. I was actually talking about a packet of Marlboros, but If I wanted a packet of tobacco, it's like 20 quid. Whereas a pack of like Marlboro Reds is something like 17. I mean, I feel like I'm taking the piss when I say this. I'm not. This is how much it costs for 20 cigarettes. Not 200, 20. Absolute fucking joke. So what should I read? I just want to eat Asian ass forever. I feel like I might want to save that. Read it to my girlfriend. She'll love that. This is why I can't have kids. That might be good. Something about some women. I am not allowed to think about hot young pussy. I'd rather watch Hitler rape my mom than date a woman my own age. There'll be like 3 people watching. I'll go for something more neutral with gender studies. Alright? We'll see what this is like. Let me see how many pages. Okay, it's short. Weekend. Okay, I'm in the way. What do I have lined up? AA pancake breakfast. Talk to my parents. Poor mother had a bad dream about me. Now I have to call her. Love my parents, but if talking to someone doesn't get me pussy, I'd rather play Xbox. Clean the house. Everything is clean the house. Go to the doctor. Wash the dishes. Hang with my parents. Drive homeless alcoholics to the fucking pancake breakfast. Wash the dishes there. This pain in my gut is some cancerous organ. Tree fungus all over my innards. I'll die in agony. This weekend, my last shot before my dick falls off. Spend it helping the fucking hobos. They all have 6 kids they don't have to pay for and get more ass than me. I should go to that whorehouse in Chinatown, pay a hooker to touch me so I don't go crazy. But it'll be some 50-year-old. What are the odds the Chinese rub and tug by the sunset Boudry Jack in the Box has a fresh-faced junior idol teen? What are the odds she'll lovingly stroke my ass crack with her hair? Why fuck a whore in America? In the Philippines they kiss you. Fuck you raw. It's a medical procedure. Paid to be masturbated by an old shrew who doesn't speak English. Hint of repulsion in her eyes. The only crack in her oriental inscrutability. If she liked it, it'd be worse. You start wondering, does she think I'm handsome? Better not blow it. Less God, more pussy. Less AA, more money. Less driving fucking homeless people around. More horse porn and coke. I've been of too much service to society. I should get a free pass to take a flamethrower to the school gym while the kids are playing dodgeball. Less humility, more arrogance, less pulling out, less condoms, less comforting some dumb needy Tinder idiot afterwards, less not impregnating pin-eye hookers, more impregnating pin-eye hookers, less truth, more lies, less spinach, more burritos, less family, more dirt bags, more cocaine, more of the girls who come with cocaine. I'll get Viagra so I don't have Acon dick, otherwise what's the point? I'm a machine for paying taxes. Someone used to clean your house, cook your meals, bear your children, take care of them, sleep with you, sleep with nobody else but you. Sorry, I can't see that because the fucking thing's in the way. Hand you a drink when you walk in the house. All you had to do was what you do now. Get up, go to work, make money. All you have to do is all that, plus what someone once did for you. What you get is half of what you got before. Someone used to need you, listen to you. Now you don't make enough money. Now you don't wash the dishes enough. Work used to be 8 hours, now 14. She works 14 hours too, and proud of it. Someone used to put your kids' drawings on the refrigerator. Now she emails you Slate articles saying even in this day and age men do 40% less housework. Wash a fucking dish. You goddamn barbarian. 45 minutes between the drive home and dreams of your boss's lizard eyes. 45 minutes. How come the dishes aren't done? I'm a feminist, but feminism destroyed life. In return, 2% of us get meaningless pussy. A woman was a house scrubbing ham baking slave. Sure, that's bad. Now we're both slaves providing data-driven solutions to millennial brand engagement in the CPG space. Slaves to establishing ownership of the trans teen bullying issue for Johnson & John's Clean and Clear brand flammable industrial solvent for children's faces. Twice as many people work. Shit just got twice as expensive. No house, no vacation. 14 hours selling shit to unhappy people who sell shit to stupid people. Whatever. Things were never good. People were never happy. Why cover an ideal based on Donna Reed reruns? But now I'm nothing to you. You're a fleshlight to me. This shit isn't working. I'm not some reactionary, but I do think it would be better if you were sold to me at 13, couldn't vote, work, read or drive, and if it were legal to beat you. Well, I mean, I could see this is going to make me the Andrew Tate of the booktubing world. I'm all for it at this stage. What are we thinking then? Is that the one? It looks like quite a fun read. I'll say that much. Well, I'm getting tired here. You want another? Can't live on the comments, boys. You know what I'm saying? You suggested it, brother. You suggested it. I think it sounds fun, for sure. I'm not sure about the literary merit. The rather watch Hitler rape my mama is it gets off to a pretty good start, I've got to admit. But yeah, I mean, looking at it, it does look like kind of anecdotal types of things. Fun, I suppose. Well, I was looking at the Hitler one. Of course, babes. I think it might be your next favourite book. As evidenced by... Oh wait, I don't want that. I have a date tonight, 38 years old, look at her profile, half Asian with excellent bone structure, but who cares? What am I going to do, have kids with her? 1/4 Asian kids with half a good looking face. She's 38, biologically useless. Fucking her as productive as sticking my dick in a log. Plus she's banged 10,000 indie rock bassists, no doubt. Has herpes and the bad kind of HPV. The log it is then. Still, she guards herself like her pussy's a treasure. Habit. She disputed my choice of date venue. Jesus Christ, you're 38. Whatever I say to you, you say yes. whatever I say, you say yes. Sorry, it's not a typo. A 19-year-old could tell me to get a whiff of my cunt from 50 yards out, you must climb a high, cold mountain harried by buzzards. At the top, spend one night in a haunted house. I'd say sign me up. But 19-year-olds, you say El Prada, they say yes. You don't have ID, you walk around the duck pond, then fuck. See them again or don't. They're happy. 38-year-old makes you crawl across nails, interrogates you off her checklist, things she dreams of in a man, which she'll suffer for, other men not providing. How do I know you're not just looking for sex? She asks. Even I won't know until I nut. If I did, I wouldn't tell you. Am I just looking for sex? Yes and no. I'd love it if you were a wizard who made me laugh. But even if you're just a bore, But even if you're a bore, if you said, want to go bowling and fuck? No man replies, just bowling, please. Don't you know how men are by now? How can you not after fucking us for a good quarter goddamn century? Thousands of us. You tasted the grizzled wangs of bartenders and bassists, senators and sewer scrubbers, teenage twinks and haggard mummies wheeling oxygen tanks. There's not one cute woman in LA who hasn't racked up Wilt Chamberlain numbers. How could you do all that and not learn one thing about men? Or you unlearn what you knew? How does the 19-year-old know more than you? She knows not to make me pretend. She was the most physically perfect person I've ever seen. Half Nepalese, half Danish. But I admired her like you admire a painting. No smell to her. She's a human rights lawyer, a woman who knows what she wants, not afraid to say it. To her credit, she also knows it doesn't exist. She checks her watch. I'd seen a blue-crowned night heron at the pond across the street, but instead of taking her there, I asked, "Drive me home." She parked. "Want to come in?" I said. "Are you being serious? You can't tell me you're feeling chemistry here." "No, but you're hot." "I feel nothing, but I could push through it. We're doomed, but I still like to masturbate into your unfeeling carcass." "How about it?" "I'm a man who knows what he wants." She said no, and we parted amicably. I thought the title teased what the story didn't exactly deliver, but it was all right. So yeah, I mean, I've the feeling this is exactly how each story will go. That's kind of fun, and I'm not seeing any other suggestions here, so it's either that or the tunnel. So what do you want, the pussy or the tunnel? Vote now, or it's the pussy. That's fair, right? I'm just going to check. Okay, so the first vid on YouTube I'm seeing, Delicious Tacos, the finest smut peddler on the web, is the first vid, hour long. Next one, You've Got Mail, unboxing Delicious Tacos, the pussy. So he's got an unboxing vid. Then there's one called Modern Life Dating, who did a stream, and it says Delicious Tacos is a loser. Bit harsh. Oh, he's a friend of Bronze Age Pervert. Okay, that might be where I heard the name before. Actually, I started reading a bit of Bronze Age Mindset when I was taking a shit the other day. I have to admit, it's the ramblings of a madman, but some of it's actually not bad. It's an enjoyable read, although I was just nitpicking, or cherry picking rather, in sections. I wasn't reading it linearly. Both the tunnel 2 weeks, then the pussy. Sin's not happy. Tunnel, for fuck's sake. Well, if you want, I'll do the tunnel as the main event, and if some of you want to read, because I can read this in like a day. I mean, it doesn't look like it's yeah, Painbow, we've already had this discussion. Just because you've read it before doesn't mean that you just get to come into the stream. I don't know why you're all crunched up. The idea is to read it fresh, so when we get onto it. Are you all hoping for a bit of cope and seethe next week then? Are you liking the every 2 weeks? Or is it just because you're a bunch of lazy fuckers and that gives you more time to read these very short novels? Even though you're all bitching at me 24/7 to do, oh, where's the book reviews? Why don't you do the book reviews anymore? And then when I suggest books, it's like, oh, I need 6 months to get through that. Calm down, calm down. Which one was that? I'm intrigued. I feel like Bronze Age Pervert would be quite proud that I was reading his work whilst taking a dump. You can quote me on that. I might be wrong. I think Delicious Tacos is apparently, I mean, he's not exactly thriving. There's an interview. Russians with Attitude is the channel name. I mean, this is pretty typical. I start a book club and the fucking books I get suggested are essentially smut. Here I am trying to give you like cult horror novels and cult extreme horror. The first thing you suggest is about fucking Asian pussy. I despair. I mean, why do I bother? I'm downloading the tunnel for you fuckers who inevitably are going to ask for it. But I'm hoping... Yeah, here it is. Because I've got a copy of this, so... Yeah, I mean, I'll take the blame for that one, Sin Boy. I was the one who suggested that. Although I think Painbone might have made it seem like it because he's a narcissist. But I believe he might have just said something along the lines of, oh, that's good because I've just read it or I was just about to read it or something like that. So that might have, that's where you've crossed the wires, as they say. Anyway, I don't see you suggesting anything. So, why don't you shut your fucking mouth? If you want, I mean, if this is Painbow's suggestion, we'll all remember this, you know. But if we want a genuine one, the tunnel is definitely like one I'd put out there. So, right, so I've got that. It's a quick read. I mean, You know, look at this. Easy. What is it? It's not even... It's about, what, 140 pages? Fairly spaced out text. So, yeah, I'll be surprised if this is more than 30,000 words, to be honest. Maybe a bit more. I mean, I'm amazed no one's suggesting a bit of GCMckay, to be honest, but, you know, I know you lot aren't exactly ones with a sophisticated palate, so... No more horror novels. Fucking hell. This isn't the complaint section of the stream, by the way. I mean... Let's read a YouTuber novel. Okay, you're all bitching like, oh, where's the good shit? And then it's like, oh, let's read some fucking YouTuber. And I am aware of the irony of me saying this, but... No, we're going to do the... We're doing the tunnel. But, I mean, I just asked, do you want me to do it next week? I mean, I don't mind. I'm going to answer that question. I think I know what you're talking about. Oh, you've actually referenced me as a fucking Harry Potter character. Brilliant. It's not a centre parting, motherfucker. If you want the proper thing. There's not enough hair there. I need a comb. No. It's too hard. I need my hair cut, but as I said earlier, everything's too expensive for me these days. So I mean, to be honest though, Anya loves it, so you can blame her for that shit. I mean, I feel like a piece of meat. Oh, Hawk's asking me why I banned him. Oh, poor little baby. That was a donation. It's a very specific donation there, Timor. Almost makes me think you're just after my book. You do need to tell me where you want it, by the way. Remember. I booted him out last week because he was... I'm sick of that cunt, basically. His attitude stinks. Not you, baby. You're safe. But you understand the rules, you know. He's banned for now. I mean, if you're watching, there's a way you can get out of jail, but I think you know what that way is. And it's not. We're talking monopoly prices here. What is it on the monopoly to get out of jail? 50 quid, isn't it? 50 bucks. Yeah. $50. Anyway, I kept saying once I'd spoken about the fucking book I was gonna log off, and yet here I am reading Delicious Tacos. Anyway, none of you have answered. Do you want to cope and seethe next week? Or are we? Do you want another book club, and we'll do the tunnel? And well, if you want, I could read that, the pussy. Although I'm fine with the pussy being focus. Why not? You know, I'm not going to object to it. Someone actually wants some more Elliot. I mean, that means we need a cope and seethe. That's a cope. Okay. I'll tell you what I could do is add... Nah, actually, forget that idea. Alright, well, it's going to be the tunnel then. It's a very quick read. I'd actually say maybe it should be a double header. The main event will be the tunnel, because I'm not sure Delicious Tacos is going to warrant thematic investigation. I mean, maybe. I don't know. But I have a little feeling it will be somewhat similar in what it's going on about, which is fine. Little slut. You're asking for a banning. You fucking start doing that shit on my stream, motherfucker. Watch what happens. But if you are watching Hawk, I don't really think you get much out of watching me, to be honest. You're an insufferable, entitled little twat on the stream. You don't seem to be enjoying yourself much. You argue with either myself or most other people on the chat. And the one-upmanship, the lack of humour, the fact that you drop fucking shitty reviews in my books, and I think you clipped me up saying unsavoury things to make me look like an arsehole. It's just like, I kind of feel like, what's the benefit of this relationship to either of us at this stage? Don't really get it, you know. And I'll admit that I have given my fair share. I don't know. That's my viewpoint on it. One of us has got to be the daddy at some point, and it's clearly going to be me. So GC, I love you. I just do a little trolling. See, like, this is the typical thing. You're just trying to tickle my balls. Well, you know what you need to do to, you know. You got to pay to play, motherfucker. Tamura, you need to tell me where you want me to send this fucking book, by the way. If you don't, I'm just going to buy fucking cigarettes. So, yeah, let me know. Well, sweet fucking nothing at the moment. Just buy some cigs. I probably will. I would get them now, but the fucking place is shut, so. But seriously, let me know where you want me to send it. If you just want a copy of it, it will be sent from Amazon anyway, probably from the closest place in Europe. I mean, it wouldn't be Greece, I don't think. But yes, I don't know, Germany, probably, somewhere like that. And that's just the Amazon from there. So as long as that's easier, or whatever, then. It's too warm over here for the wine. I want it now, but in general it's a bit, I don't like it when it's humid, you know. It's not very, unless I had like rosé or some shit, but I don't. So yeah, I thought I'd just go with a beer. No, and never will there be. That's the end of that conversation. Right, well, Hawk, you know what to do. There is a way out of the purgatory that you're in. Depends how much you want it. We shall be doing the tunnel. I'll get fucking... Just so people know, if people actually bother watching this afterwards. Is that what it is? Oh, that'll do. There it is, if you're not familiar with it. I've got to say as well, I don't normally judge the covers, but this cover is arguably the most perfect cover. it's gorgeous. Kind of actually want to masturbate over it, which sounds a bit gay, probably. But yeah, that's a cover. In terms of like what you read in the novel as well, like, don't know what else to say. It's fucking fantastic. But yeah, that'll be next time on the book club. Maybe with a bit of delicious tacos. Maybe we should eat some delicious tacos whilst talking about it. And then I mean, I suppose at some point we could do just one where it's like a reading. We can just go through, like maybe with delicious tacos, you could tell me what your favourite parts were, and we can just spend a few hours going through them. I mean, mainly because I'm not sure there's going to be that much to analyse in them. Okay, it might make a point about modernity, or at least, yeah, modern feminism or some shit like that. But I don't know whether it's going to be enough to warrant a whole fucking discussion, you know? Who knows? But this book is the shit. Oh, don't get me started on fucking Olympics. Just do something else, please. He's revealing that he spends a lot of time watching YouTube vids where it just films some athletic woman's ass, basically. But those are the kind of videos I should make, because you know that's what people want. Pornography. So pornography and misogyny, those are the demographics to go for in this modern age. Or wokeism. It needs to be extreme on whatever front it is. You're fucking damn right they do. Old Asian ass as well. Not even the good stuff. Fucking wrinkled prune like shit. I fucking hate the Olympics. Fuck the Olympics. So even cavemen fucking hated that shit. It was just the only thing they knew, and they didn't know any better. And you arseholes are still watching it 3,000 years later. What the fuck is wrong with you? There's nothing. There's no competition in it. Whatever. And like those female athletes are probably infertile, by the way. So you're admiring. Really, what you're admiring is barren. I'm gonna go. This is just fucking pointless at this stage. Thanks for tuning in. It's been fun. Yeah, that's Penpal. Never write to strangers, I think, is the moral of the story. It's only going to get everyone you dare to try and love killed. I think that's the moral of the story. Or don't trust your mother if if she's a single mother, which is probably good advice in general. Yeah, she will secretly ruin any aptitude for a personality that you might have, and make you a giant pussy yourself. I think that was the message. I might be getting it slightly skewed, but yeah, they'll probably just say you've got ADHD now. So enjoy the hub, you know, have a Big Mac occasionally. Don't work out too excessively. The whole obsession with that in the manosphere is super gay. Like, gay to the point of like, just suck some dick. Like, it's kind of ridiculous how often you're going on about, gotta hit the gym, bro, gotta get some discipline, gotta do that. Just suck a dick. That's what you want to do, and that's fine. That's the nature. But just swallow some of that cum and then move on. Do something else. Dare I say, read a book, you know. Maybe write a journal. Not the journaling bullshit of like, oh, I got up at 5:30 today, went for a half an hour run, then had a cold shower. I wanted to wait because Huberman told me I shouldn't have coffee until 2 hours after I wake up. So instead I got some sunlight and I got a tan on my balls. And then after that I did 15 minutes of cardio. This is my productive day. There's not 1 ounce of like pussy or money making in it. It's just pure cope. Then I read a self-help book. This is the lives people are living now. And I'm not even exempt from this. That's the sadder thing. But whatever. Nothing wrong with being jacked. The only thing that's wrong with it is being obsessed with it. That's what I would say. Nothing wrong with it. You don't need a gym. You don't need to go to the gym. Fuck the gym. The gym is just costing you needless money. And it is gay. It's super gay. You're never going to pull in the gym because the women who go to them are narcissistic at best, or just look at you like scum, unless you're, you know, Chad Williamson or some shit. And even if you did look like Chad Williamson, you're in a fucking gym in a local area. They're not going to look at you like some YouTube celebrity or whatever. It's pointless. You're not going to get ass at the gym, and the only ass you will get will be gay ass. Probably ass you don't even ask for. But whatever. If you appreciate it for the homoerotic aesthetical qualities, that's fine. Just stop going on about it. Correcto mundo. Although really, I mean, you should finish that book in like 3 days. But whatever. This, what is it? So if it's 140 pages, you need to read something like 20 pages a day from this moment forward. Which I still feel is going to be a stretch for some of you. That's the thing I worry about, but whatever. No, wait, 10 pages a day. What am I, fucking my maths well off. 10 pages a day, then you'll finish it. Right, I'm off anyway. I'm done. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in. I hate the fact that I get less viewers. You're all bitching at me to talk about books. The moment I start a book club, I lose viewers. You're a paradox. I've got to give you that. You're an enigma, and I'm fucking a Poundland Benedict Cumberbatch with no hope of ever figuring it out. And on that note, I'll see you fucking later. Cheers. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. Thank fuck the football's back in a couple of weeks. Jesus Christ. This is why you're watching the Olympics, because you're bored out of your ass. Do something else. Watch reruns of fucking bowling for all I care. Just don't fall for that crap. It's not fun. It's the dullest shit out there. Not entertainment. It's not competitive. It's not even a sport. It's absolutely useless. You might as well just be timing your own masturbation fucking sessions or whatever. Waste of time. I'll see you later. Take care. Bye bye.